Go Joe Burrow. He deserves to be MVP. I wish he was the Browns quarterback. Kind of mean that.
If you're looking for the most reactionary, silly, and unserious show on the internet, then you're home. Live from Hamilton, Ohio, it's Off the Bench by Chatterbox Sports on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, everybody, good morning and welcome in. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kinner, Elliot Rearing, and Jacob Tissett in the producer chair. Today, no Casey McAllister taking care of other Chatterbox responsibilities, but excited to be with you guys here today. Happy Thursday. Gentlemen, good morning. How are we today?
I'm all right. I'll tell you what. I had a bit of a rough start to the morning. I told Jacob. So my car, and I'm over the winter. We're done. It's done.
Yes,
Stop. Just stop it. I don't know why we're still doing it. Stop it. Somebody get the groundhog and kidnap it. I don't care. It's got to end. I was driving in this morning, and all of a sudden, about halfway through on the highway, my car loses windshield wiper fluid. And then about 10 seconds after I realized that, a truck, a massive truck, dumps I don't know what onto my car. I don't know what sludge and muck and I don't know what else, other sort of chemicals are on there. But my windshield was absolutely like painted, and I couldn't see a thing. I couldn't see one single thing. So I had to pull over, and I had this little water bottle. I literally had to spray it and use a used T-shirt from my trunk and wipe off my windshield. And then I got to, I don't know what road in Hamilton. I got somewhere in Hamilton, same exact thing, truck, dump sludge all over my windshield. I've got no fluid. So what do I got to do? I got to pull over again. I got to squirt it down with my old water bottle. Absolutely disgusting morning I'm having, especially given what happened last night. You know what? I'm having a horrible day. I'm having a horrible day. How was your day, Kinner?
Wow. I jumped on. I never really asked how your day was before the show started. I didn't anticipate this. I mean, we all get upset when our teams lose, but you're on one today. Not in a bad way, but you're feeling it today. We'll take it light today.
I'm so annoyed. I'm so annoyed with everything. I'm so annoyed. I'm just annoyed.
I am with you though. The winter, I'm over it. I feel like this has actually been one of the colder, crappier winters in quite some time. But luckily, March and April and spring is not too far off in the distance. But either way, the only way that this winter can ruin my life more is if they ruin opening day. Maybe baseball shouldn't have opening day on March freaking 27th. But I'm just hoping that a month from now we start to at least see a little bit of warmer temps. But either way, Jake, good morning. How are we? I know you're doing double duty today. You have this show dialed in after. Yep. You're in the producer chair. You're hosting. You're doing a lot today.
Now, we'll see what Tom has to say on Dialed In. Yes, last week was an exciting Dialed In. I'm excited to be in the host chair. Maybe let our voice be heard, those of us in the chat. So we'll see where that goes. But first and foremost, off the bench, and happy to be here.
So what we're referring to is last week. It was a very animated Dialed In. Tom and Luke had a lot to say about Joe Burrow having a lot to say, and it led to a lot of people having a lot to say. And Jacob did not have a mic in front of him. He could only say what he needed to say in the chat, but he will have the mic in front of him today, and we'll see if it's dialed in or dialed back. I'm very curious to see how that goes.
Look, I'm not going to push the envelope. I know my role. I'm the producer. It's Tom and Luke's show, but if I have to step in, I'll step in.
That's right.
Well, what I love is I say a lot of dumb stuff on this show, and Casey does a good job of just like I could see he grimaces. I could tell he has something to say, but he doesn't. But he did not hold back last week on Dialed In. So I'm like, and that was Tom. He went at Tom. So that's why you push Casey's buttons, but he didn't care who he was talking to at that point. He was going to let his opinion be heard. So, but yeah, Dialed In coming up after Off the Bench here today. We're going to talk some Bearcats coming up in a bit. We're going to push Bearcats talk probably till the second hour just to give Elliot a little more time to calm down a bit. We're going to talk some Reds coming up.
Did you see how it ended? Did you see? I
did not see how that game ended. No, what happened? I saw the press conference. I saw Wes Miller making excuses while. Oh yeah, he was making excuses.
He doesn't make excuses, Kenner.
Yeah, he's over the excuses.
No excuses.
He's not going to make excuses. But here's his quick list. It's my bit. I do this exact bit on the golf course. I'm not an excuse guy. But guess what? My arm's a little tired. It's a little tired.
I mean,
he's so pissed off. He's so pissed.
I tell you what, let's see what else is going on in the world of sports. Let's send it to our very, very happy guy, Elliot Rearing. Elliot's headlines, ladies and gentlemen.
Sounder.
Elliot's headlines.
Local and national headlines. Whatever's going on in the world of sports, Elliot has you covered. Off the Bench brings you Elliot's headlines.
Bearcats.
Oh, boy.
They lose 62-59. That score is a little misleading. It's a shame Kinder didn't see the end because we'll go over it, but it's probably one of the more disgusting ends I've ever seen in a college basketball game. Chisel James and Day had 13 points. Dylan Mitchell, 10 points. Dan Skillings had 6 points in the final 6 seconds. Aziz had 10 boards. Up next, TCU at home on Saturday. See everybody.
Well,
there.
real quick, if it makes you feel better, you're upset about last night's finish. I mean, it could be worse. Your team could have given Doug Gottlieb his first win in 3 months.
It's true.
So just always remember, it could always
Here's the thing. Yeah, but Kinner, here's the thing about being down 9 with 4 seconds and having a chance to tie it with 1 second. There's no other way to describe that feeling other than pure misery. Justin, with 9 seconds remaining in the basketball game, the Bearcats trailed by 9. With 9 seconds, they trailed by 9. Dan Skillings hits a 3. Dan Skillings steals the inbound pass, hits a 3. The Bearcats steal the next inbound pass, and with a wide-open three-point attempt, Betsy,
the best look of the 3.
Best look of the 3 you could have had with 3 seconds. Had the ball on their side of the court. Wide-open 3. Missed the shot to tie.
Oh, here's Skillings me here.
Absolutely insane. West Virginia legitimately couldn't inbound the basketball. They called 2 timeouts prior to the third and final steal. But my God. Other basketball. Rutgers, they hung on to beat Washington in overtime, 89-85. Auburn. By the way, a classic Big Ten match there, Rutgers and Washington.
Yeah.
Auburn survived against Arkansas, 67-60. Fourth-ranked Alabama, they fell to 15th-ranked Missouri on the road, 110-98.
Yeah.
We're giving up 110 in regulation.
They were down 14-0 to start the game. So it appears the Auburn loss might have broke the boys. We'll see if they're able to bounce back. But the way the SEC schedule works, it's 5 more games against 5 top 15 opponents. Not a lot of time to get right. But, tough stretch.
10th-ranked St. John's, they dismantled DePaul 82-58. 17th-ranked Kentucky, they got a massive win at home last night against Vandy, 82-61. Owe and Amari Williams combined for 37 points in their victory. NBA news, nothing, but they did return to action last night. The Hornets shocked the Lakers 100-97. Luka, 5 for 18 from the floor, 1 for 9. From beyond the arc.
Fat? Fat?
Maybe.
Good trade.
Do they have fast food in L.A.?
In-N-Out.
In-N-Out?
Yeah.
FC Cincinnati. The Orange and Blue, they got a win last night 4-1 over Montagua Tegucigalpa.
Yeah.
Montagua Tegucigalpa.
For sure.
4-1, they beat them. Buka, Denke, Evander all scored goals. Buka had 2. So there you go. FC Cincinnati, good start. And finally,
I didn't even know their season.
Yeah, season starts mid-Feb. Season starts mid-Feb, ends early Jan. NFL. The NFL informed teams yesterday that the 2025 per-team salary cap will fall in the range of $277.5 million to about $281.5 million, way up from last year's $255 million. The cap will have increased by more than $53 million over the last 2 years, which begs the question: if you got the Jamar Chase deal done before last season, I feel like you'd be in a pretty good spot right about now.
If you gave Jamar Chase what he was asking for to the T last year, it's already a bargain deal.
Isn't that
actually
fun?
If you gave him what he was supposed to get to T right now, it would be a bargain deal.
That's also true. That's also true.
Look, that salary cap went up the exact amount that technically it might cost to keep Tee Higgins. If you, you want to keep T, but I mean, the exact amount that went up is about the amount that it would take per year to keep Tee Higgins at this point before you even get to Jamar Chase. And I know you guys saw it, but reports are coming out now that he wants 40 or more. And we kind of all figured that. I think, Jake, you and I were agreed for a moment, but we might have been wrong. A lot of people were saying that the Bengals that they cost themselves a lot of money by not getting a deal done last year. I thought 35, 36 mil, he'd go up over Justin Jefferson. It sounds like he's going to go up significantly higher than that. It's not just, resetting the market. It's almost setting a new market for wide receivers. We're talking 40 mil. That's an average quarterback in today's NFL, that's Daniel Jones. The Giants gave Daniel Jones $40 million, and it killed that franchise. And that's what Jamar Chase wants at wide receiver. Wow, that's a lot of money. He's going to get it, but, man, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, that's tough. I do think he was closer to the 37, 38. I mean, obviously that's still a big jump, $2 or $3 million in annual value is a significant difference. But I don't ever think we were getting Jamar Chase for 35 or 36. I think he was always going to go significantly
penny
above
more.
Justin Jefferson. Yeah, no, not just
more.
1 penny more. He's going to, I forget what the exact quote is, but I don't think we can say it on radio. So I don't think it was ever going to be just, a couple thousand more, 1 million more. I thought it was always going to be 37, 38, but 40 is still going to be a kick in the teeth. My number has always been sub 70 for the two. And if Jamar Chase is going to get 40, that puts us in a tough spot with what it's talked about Tee Higgins getting from other teams.
A Triple Crown will do that. Yeah. It'll do that. It'll cost you.
But those are your headlines.
Very nice.
I don't know if you guys saw this. Our guy Carson Beck, he's now with the Hurricanes, right?
Sure.
So Joe Burrow had his house ransacked not too long ago. That's been making news. Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce. I don't think this is in the same category, but again, so Carson Beck and Hannah Cavender had 3 vehicles stolen overnight in South Florida. Cavender's SUV was found, but Beck's Mercedes and Lamborghini remain missing. So if anyone sees a Lamborghini or a Mercedes out and about, please call your local authorities. It's missing. These two individuals have 3 very, very nice vehicles that were all stolen last night. T's and P's to those two. T's and P's.
Yeah.
College athletics, man.
Yeah, please get the college kid his Lamborghini back. How else is he going to get to class? How else is Carson Beck going to be able to drive to class without his Lamborghini? And what was the other one?
A Mercedes and a Lamborghini, and I guess a bum SUV. I didn't really say what kind of SUV.
I remember when I was in high school, I swear to God, if I didn't have my Mercedes or Lamborghini driving to Elder High on Vincent Ave, I would be in a world of hurt.
When I was in college.
Please, somebody save Carson Beck. Anybody.
The thing is, when you're in college, a lot of times, depending on what car you have, I know the car I had in college, you would have been doing me a favor to steal my car, at that point. But a Lamborghini and a Mercedes, come on. Do you have a garage? Are they just are all these vehicles just in the student parking lot? Like, what's happening here? I don't understand.
I would assume the student parking lot at Miami is pretty crazy.
Yeah, I'd imagine they built their own facility for just him, and just so he could quarterback that squad.
Spirit Cat in our chat says he bets Carson Beck keeps the washer fluid full in his Lamborghini.
Oh.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't know. Here's the thing. I don't check under the hood and check my washer fluid regularly. I guess I got to just start doing that now.
You should get a Lamborghini, dude.
Probably.
You should get a Lamborghini. Speaking of that Joe Burrow incident, the 3 men charged with breaking in to Joe Burrow's home were among the 7 men busted for robbing Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. These men have stolen millions of dollars worth of valuables from athletes recently, including $300,000 from Joe Burrow. I know some of the pictures, they came out a couple weeks ago. I know this is slightly an older story, but the pictures, they're literally taking pictures with the items that they stole. These are the dumbest criminals in the history of the world. You're literally putting it out there, what you've done. You made it super easy. It doesn't make any sense. But there was one picture where the guy just has 2 thumbs up. He's wearing one of the necklaces of Joe Burrow and just giving 2 thumbs up to the camera. Dumbest criminals ever. I don't understand it. I don't understand it.
JB9 Super Bowl necklace, nonetheless. So the most identifiable necklace to a certain player probably was the one he chose to wear and post on social media. Yeah, every time stories like this pop up where, any kind of crime is busted via social media or anything else, I always just scratch my head. It's like, if you're going to do something dumb enough to steal from a professional athlete where you're probably going to get caught, why do you post it? Because then you're definitely going to get caught.
It makes no sense. But stupid people are all around the world.
I love this, Elliot. I love it. I wish you weren't in a bad mood. I wish you weren't having a bad day, but I love when you're in this mood. It is my favorite. But all right, we're gonna step away for a few. When we come back, we're gonna talk Cincinnati Reds baseball, of course. We're gonna talk about a couple of our most underrated players. We keep talking about a lot of the same players when it comes to the Reds. We keep talking about a lot about their manager and Terry Francona. But what about some of these Reds players that are going to play a pivotal role in them accomplishing their goals this upcoming season that we're maybe not focusing on enough? We're going to talk about some of these underrated Reds. When we come back, we'll be right back. More Off the Bench next. And we are back off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kinner, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett with you here. 1410 ESPN Radio in Dayton, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, talking a little Cincinnati Reds. The Reds will have their first spring training game of spring training coming up on Saturday, and that'll be at 3:30. So we'll have that right here in Dayton on 1410 ESPN Radio. Excited about that. I love being able to drive around and listen to Reds baseball again, whether it's watching it, listening to it. I'm just glad that we're getting back to that. This spring training, I know like preseason stinks. I don't care about preseasons and other sports and baseball. I'm going to pay attention to spring training and the early goings, but you get to a certain point where you hit a wall and you're just like, okay, can we just get to opening day? But I do think because you have a unique team like this that has a lot of youth on it, I do believe, and obviously with the, a re-energized, a group of youth in this roster with the, addition of Terry Francona, I am kind of curious to see what kind of strides some of these young guys have made in the offseason. Coming off a disappointing season like last year, I'm not going to put too much stock into guys who underperform in spring, and I don't want to overreact to guys who are performing at a high level in spring. But it is nice just to kind of get back to talking about guys on the field versus what to anticipate once they get out there, and we'll have a chance for that this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting dynamic with the Reds right now because you feel like you know what you've got, but at the same time, you just have so many unanswered questions in your mind. And to finally get a resolve to some of those coming up in the next 30 days or so, it's gonna be big for all of us. We need answers regarding CES. I need to know personally. If he's able to hit great in the spring, I'm gonna feel so confident coming into this season. And you go around the pitching staff. I mentioned some of them yesterday. Graham Ashcraft. This is a guy that we think is just out, right? We think he's on the outs. He's going to be in the bullpen, or maybe not. Maybe he doesn't even start in the major league club. We don't know. But what we do know is that there's always a chance for him to be there, and there's so many chances for everybody else. There's a lot of young guys in this team, and the fact that we get to see them hopefully improve year after year is all I ask for, really. Just improve just a little bit. Do not regress. Noelvi Marte is the only one in that camp, at least in my mind right now, that's just gone backwards completely. But everybody else is trending in the right direction.
Yeah, I think that's really the hope at this point last year too, is that everyone was trending in the right direction and it was going to be a great season. And that's really what I keep coming back to is Was last year a letdown of expectations? Yeah, it was. But why wouldn't I have the same faith in those guys this year if they're able to stay healthy that I had going into last season? It's not like we saw, with the exception of Noelvi, all these guys take a step back. We still believe that most of them, when healthy, will be that version that we believed could be a playoff team last year. And the Reds went out and made the additions somewhat necessary to improve the lineup. And the floor of the lineup is certainly better, though the ceiling might not be exactly where we want it to be. But I think it's an exciting team. And I know, you kind of said it right there, but I'll definitely be watching the first 2 or 3 spring training games before I realize it's spring training, the same way I do with the NFL preseason.
That's right.
You watch the first one because you're excited to have it back, and then you're like, I'll just wait till the real thing happens. But very excited to get back into the news and everything like that as well.
Ellie De La Cruz, Matt McClain, obviously Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo. These seem to be a lot of the same players we keep talking about over and over and over. And obviously that's the way that they're going to be successful this year. But a lot of times the way that a team like the Reds is going to be successful, it's going to be a lot of times it's going to be them relying on names that we don't talk about in January, February, in the off season. And all of a sudden the season gets here and it's like, holy crap, like this guy is one of the main reasons that they're having success. And we hope to be having that conversation. We'll send it to you guys on this. Like, what are some of the underrated names? What are some of the names for this Reds team that is going to be the key to their success that we're just not talking about enough, that we're not giving enough attention and credit to? What are some names right now that you believe are the most underrated Reds as we head into 2025?
One of the names I had, and last year I definitely did not give him any credit, and I probably should have given him a little bit more credit. Santiago Espinal is a guy, 118 games last year, didn't have a great batting average, didn't have a fantastic OBP, but down the stretch when the Reds needed big hits, I felt like he was always there to at least put contact to the baseball. There's a lot of Reds, and I won't name names, that strike out at like a 40% clip. That's not Santiago Espinal. I think he's a guy this year that I'm going to have a lot of confidence in, not being an everyday player, but being a solid backup. And whenever you need something, I think he's going to be there to give it. He's not going to hit a clutch home run whenever you need one, or a grand slam in the bottom of the ninth. But if you need a base hit to maybe start a rally or something, I don't hate the fact that we have Santiago Espinal. Again, I probably made fun of him more times than I made fun of anybody else last year. But I think he's a player that not really anybody's talking about, and I think that he's a good guy for this team. He's a good backup. He's a good utility player. And if we didn't get Gavin Lux, he would be the main utility guy for our infield, right? We have Gavin Lux now, so he's going to be everywhere. But I think Santiago Espinal heading into this year, though he won't play probably significant time, he's going to contribute. He's a pretty damn good defender, and offensively he's going to give you just enough. Never strikes out, ever. So if you need to run the contact play, our favorite play in baseball, Santiago Espinal is your guy. That's my first name.
I think my first name is a guy that wasn't here last year. It's a free agency addition that a lot of people have talked more poorly about than great about, but it's Austin Hayes. And did we want a bigger name outfielder in Cincinnati? Sure, that would have been great. It's fun to project those things. But Austin Hayes on a 1-year cheap bargain deal to come to Cincinnati after a year where he was ravaged by injuries, after 2023 when he was an all-star with 16 home runs and nearly a 330 OBP, that's a guy in our outfield that can really change the course of this team. When you're replacing, the litany of AAA players we saw play in the outfield last year with a guy that's an all-star the last time he was completely healthy, I think if Austin Hayes can return to 2023 form, he can be a real key piece to the Reds. And not, even if he doesn't get all the way there, if he's close to that, then what a great signing that was. And that could be the outfielder that we wanted for so long and some think we still don't have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the Austin Hayes pick right there, mainly because it wasn't the sexy name that we all wanted. Now, a lot of that goes back to Nick Krall coming out and saying that was going to be their number one goal this offseason, was to address that need, and they didn't necessarily do that. Austin Hayes was kind of like we kicked the tires on a lot of big-name outfielders, or at least high-quality outfielders throughout the offseason. They couldn't pull the trigger or get the deal done with any of these guys. So Austin Hayes, I think in the eyes of Reds fans, we almost feel like we just settled for Austin Hayes. But the bottom line is, for every point you just made, if he returns to that form, Is he going to be an all-star outfielder? No, but we just need a guy that's going to produce, because it's
Right.
if we're just relying on him to hit the ball to the ballpark, this team's not going to be very good. But he needs to hit the ball to the ballpark, as well as Candelario, as well as Tyler Stevenson. Ellie's power numbers need to improve. There's a lot of guys that need to contribute in that department. Defensively, obviously, is going to be very key as well. This was a bad defensive team last year, and I think that they've slowly addressed that as well. I think they've improved defensively from last year to this as well. I like the Austin Hayes pick. I'm going to roll with TJ Friedel. I think Friedel does not get talked about enough either, because if you go back to last year when he was in the lineup, a lot of times he was one of the more consistent hitters that the Reds had. And in his absence, it really threw off the dynamic of the outfield. You had guys playing in spots that they're not comfortable playing. He also was a good quality leadoff hitter at times when they used him in that role as well. And then defensively, and then you could tell how much the production dipped off when he was out of the lineup. I think TJ Friedel is one of those straws that kind of stirs the drink. We don't talk about him a lot. He's not going to, be in any major highlights on SportsCenter or anything like that. But I think TJ Friedel is a very underrated Red as well. Some name to keep an eye on, because if everyone's doing their job, if Austin Hayes comes in and makes a splash, if Lux is a great utility player, if Candelario's power numbers go up, if Stevenson repeats what he did last year, Ellie takes that next step. Obviously, Matt McClain, if he's healthy and picking up where he left off after his rookie campaign, TJ Friedel is just going to be that cherry on top of what could be a special season for this Reds team. I'm going to go with TJ Friedel in this conversation.
I like that name a lot. I think TJ Friedel's a guy that the Reds, if he plays up to the way he played 2 years ago, this is going to be a better outfield than we all think. Because as of right now, I think collectively all of our thoughts on the outfield is that it's pretty underwhelming. And that's
he was almost a 4-WAR player in 2023.
Yeah.
He was a 3.8 B-WAR in 2023.
He didn't ground into a double play, I don't think. Is that the real stat in a full season? So it's absolutely
Correct.
incredible.
Zero ground into double plays in how many plate appearances? 556 plate appearances.
That's just insane. That's just insane. I love TJ Friedel a lot. Last year I know he was banged up and we didn't get to see the full TJ Friedel experience. This year I'm hoping we do, because again he is the centerpiece to our outfield. And he makes it go for sure. I want to give another player, and I hate to steal it. I hate to steal it from our guy Sam LeCure, but Tyler Stevenson, coming into last season, I had no faith in. I didn't think he was a catcher. I thought he was going to be moving around DH for space. The argument with that was he probably wasn't a good enough hitter to do that. So it's like, all right, you really got to work on your catching behind the plate, and he did. I think he got way better. His framing was better. His defense was better. Everything about it was better. Everything about him was better last year. And if Tyler Stevenson's able to improve upon that this year, we're gonna have a bona fide top 10 catcher in Major League Baseball. I already think we do, and maybe that even goes up from there. He had 19 home runs last season. If he's able to somehow hit, I mean, I don't expect him to hit 30 home runs. If he's able to hit over 20 home runs a year, that's an offensive weapon, right? And I think that's a guy that the Reds absolutely need to be good. Not to mention, as we have an ever-growing young pitching core that keeps coming up in our system, having a veteran catcher that's able to work with them. And I think that was the fear, too. I felt like a lot of guys 2 years ago preferred the other options over Tyler Stevenson. I think now Tyler Stevenson is the premier option. I think the pitchers like him. I think he's done a great job. And I think he gets, I will give Hunter Green all the credit in the world, Nick Ladill, we'll give all these guys all the credit in the world. Tyler Stevenson gets credit for that as well. I mean, he's also calling the game. So I think this is a guy that a lot of people are going to be sleeping on still, including myself probably. But I think he's going to improve. I think he's only just going to get better from here. He had a 340 on base percentage last year. I mean, the guy was flat out good. And I think the Reds, if I remember, I don't remember the exact number, but the Reds were like, I think 30 games or 20 games worse when he wasn't playing, when he wasn't on the field. That's a significant number. Like that's not a rounding error. That's not a mistake.
Right.
That's blatantly you don't have your better catcher out on the field. I understand that catchers can't start every single game, and hopefully Tyler, at least if he's not catching, plays significantly more time at DH. He had 100. He played in 138 games last year, had 515 plate appearances. He did his job, and that's a name next year or this year, excuse me. I'm very, very excited to see grow.
I think last year was an awesome step, and it's kind of what we thought he could have turned into after the start of his career. The
Yeah.
offensive powerhouse at catcher, and he took a bigger step than I ever would have expected defensively, which is great, but probably useless in the next couple of years. So kudos to him for trying so hard to get better at framing and everything like that while ABS is, on the way. But
yeah.
my other pick is a guy that is less of a numbers improvement and more of a feeling improvement. If you look at Alexis Diaz's numbers last year, they're not terrible. They're certainly not as bad as it feels, but you lost that feeling as Reds fans that you had in 22 and 23, that when he got out there, the game was over. No one was going to get on base. No, he was going to strike him out. The game was over. That wasn't the case last year. He was bumpy, still got the job done more often than not, was a serviceable reliever, but there were have been questions this offseason about whether or not he's going to be the full-time closer. And that would have been crazy to say a couple years ago with what we were watching from him. So if he can return to that form and be that lockdown closer, we can always debate how much a closer really means to the team and whether, it's more beneficial to just pitch him, against the meat of the lineup in different places rather than saves. But I think, having a closer that's absolutely nails is such a big piece for the team and the fan base to have confidence at the end of games, end of close games where you have a small lead and you can just send a guy in from the pen and say, this one's over. We're going to win it. So I think if Alexis Diaz can return to that form, it'll really help a young team in terms of confidence late in close games.
This name's a little different as far as like an underrated name, but I do believe if this individual plays at a high level, and again, the highest level he's ever played at was still, he hit about 250 in that range, and I think at the most had about 50 RBIs one season. But I think the backup catcher for the Reds in Trevino, I think is a very underrated name to keep an eye on, because if he could provide stability to where you could put him in the lineup and count on him to get some big quality hits throughout the season, and especially in high leverage moments throughout the year. If he plays really well, that's going to allow the Reds to keep Tyler Stevenson in the lineup more times than not throughout the season in regards to DH and that type of thing. And I think if you don't have a good quality backup catcher and you don't want to have to go to him if you don't have to, that's going to put a lot of pressure on Tyler Stevenson. The only time he's in the lineup is when he's catching. And the reason I say that is because I do see almost a conflict potentially brewing, not between Tyler Stevenson and Gavin Lux, but between opportunities between Tyler Stevenson and Gavin Lux, because Gavin Lux had an interview yesterday and let it be known that he doesn't really care what his role is as long as he's getting at bats, as long as he's getting hits. And at times it's going to be interesting to see who's in that DH role throughout the season. So I know I tailed away a little bit there, but to bring it back, I like Trevino, and they brought him in to be the backup catcher. He's a veteran backup catcher as well, so I think that helps. You're not relying on calling up a catcher from your system and just hoping that he gets it as the season goes on. This is a guy that has a lot of experience. He's played with the Yankees. He obviously has major league at bats. I think having a veteran backup pitcher like that is huge. And I think that the better he is, the better Tyler Stevenson could be, because the Reds will be able to utilize Stevenson more in other avenues than just catcher. So I'm going to go with Trevino in this conversation.
Elite defensive catcher, too. Yeah. Gold glove. So absolutely gives you a lot more flexibility moving Stevenson to the DH. And that's kind of the pro of having guys like Lux in the lineup, even guys like McLean and Steer that can play a lot of other positions, is if you have, two guys that are hot, and Gavin Lux and Tyler Stevenson and Jose Trevino's playing great at catcher, you can move those guys around and keep the hot bats in the lineup. So the versatility the Reds, added by having a real backup catcher, no offense to Luke Mailey, but having a real major league backup catcher, that gives them so much more of flexibility throughout the season.
Last year, the Reds were missing that guy so much, and they just didn't have it. Austin Wins, I think, was good in his 5 games. There was
like 2 doubles.
Yeah, I think so. there was just so many backup catchers they had last year, and just none of them really panned out. So hopefully Trevino is a guy that's going to be able to at least give Tyler some sort of consistency when he's not there. I'm going to give one more name just because I think that this is somebody who could be way better than any of us think that he is. Jake Fraley has played 6 seasons in Major League Baseball. His debut was 2019. He played 12 games in 2019. He played 7 in 2020. So I'll just throw those 2 seasons out of the window. 4 seasons he's been in Major League Baseball. He has been somebody that's at least solid. Last year was bad. I can't believe he played more games than he did in 2023. But he was dealing with a lot of stuff. He was probably hurt for most of the year. He was dealing with a lot of stuff behind the scenes. I don't put any stock into what he was last year, and everybody made fun of him. He was the singles merchant. Well, I think this year he's going to take that step up. He had 15 home runs in 2023. I think you're going to see more of that this year. I'll be interested to see how the dynamic works because, you have Jacobs' guy, Austin Hayes, out there. We don't know who else is going to be in the outfield. Especially, I expect the wiggle room to be less. If you're not contributing against right-handed pitching this season, if you're Jake Fraley, I don't know if he's going to have a spot. I hope he does, and I think he will. But if Jake Fraley is going to be able to be the 2023 Red that he was, again, the Reds outfield just better than we think it is. As of right now, we're saying that we're underwhelmed with it. I think there's still a chance that the outfield is going to be fine this year.
All right, off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. We'll step away for a few. When we come back, I want to bring up that quote from Gavin Lux just real quick. And again, Gavin Lux was an interesting talking point earlier in the week when we talked about the fact that this guy might not be an everyday player for the Cincinnati Reds, and that irked some people. But let's pick up with that when we come back. We'll have college football around the corner, top 5 coaches facing the most pressure heading into next season. A ranking came out that we want to touch on as well. We'll get to news, not news, and then we'll talk some Bearcat basketball because I know Elliot is itching to get back to the hardwood. So we'll be right back. More off the bench when we come back. All right, and we are back off the bench. Justin Kinner, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tista with you here. Shout out to Casey McAllister. Not with us today, taking care of other responsibilities for Chatterbox, but looking forward to getting him back. But we got Jacob in the producer chair holding it down. Continuing on with our Reds conversation, if you're just jumping on the YouTube side and missed it, we were just talking about the names for the Reds that don't get the attention or the talking points that they deserve. We talked so much about the Hunter Greens, the Nick Lodolos, the obviously Ellie De La Cruz and Matt McClains, and rightfully so, by the way. But for all those guys could have career years, but if they don't have the complementary pieces and production around them, it's not going to mean a whole lot. And we throw out a lot of names that we're expecting big things from. For Ellie and Matt McClain and those guys to be the best version of themselves, they have to have help around them. And that's why some of the names we brought up, like Trevino and Tyler Stevenson and others, are going to be so key when it's all said and done. One of those names, too, and I don't think this is an underrated name, this is an interesting name, is Gavin Lux. And we talked about him earlier in the week. I know that Nick Kirby on Chatterbox Reds earlier in the week, and I know Chatterbox had kind of put this out on Twitter. Nick Kirby said Gavin Lux may not have a set position, but he will be in the lineup every day against right-handed pitching. Nick Kroll is not trading Mike Soroto and a comp pick for Lux to sit on the bench most nights. And look, that's what makes this interesting. This means that there is depth, that there's log jams of guys, and that's a good problem to have. And more times than not, and I don't want to talk about injuries, but injuries kind of put teams in position to make things easier, right? Do you not want to say easier, but a lot of times injuries make your decision for you of who's going to be everyday players. Assuming there's no injuries, though, Gavin Lux, we've gone through this before. Candelario, if he's your guy at third, obviously Christian Encarnacion Strand at first, McClain at second, shortstops filled with Ellie De La Cruz, Tyler Stevenson's your catcher, the outfield set. He's not an outfielder. I get what everybody is saying. I'm not an anti-Gavin Lux guy. I'm just trying to figure it out. Gavin Lux was quoted yesterday at spring training as saying he doesn't really care where he plays. The only thing he wants is at bats. Obviously, just because you don't start doesn't mean you're not going to see the field or get at bats every single night. But where are these at bats going to come from? Where is his time on the field going to come from? Obviously, against right-handed pitching, that's where he's going to obviously be a big asset to this team. But this is why it's important for, obviously, having a manager like Terry Francona of how to balance this situation.
Yeah, I think Gavin Lux, I don't want to get yelled at again by the Reds Twitter. Gavin Lux is a good baseball player. I'm happy he's here. But if you look at everybody in the outfield, you look at everybody in the infield, Gavin Lux has not earned the right to play in any of those positions yet. Again, injuries happen, things change. Gavin Lux hits 25 home runs. There's so many things that can happen that makes him an everyday player. And I know that the easy point is put him in left field to replace Spencer Steer. I think they're just so comparable. I think they're very, very comparable baseball players. And the difference is that Gavin Lux can play defense. Well, Gavin Lux plays defense in the infield. That's where he plays defense. He has not played very many games in the outfield. I'd hardly consider using any of those stats as a metric. And if you did use them, I would say they're pretty much just as bad as Spencer Steer. Saying that, Gavin Lux can be an everyday player. I'm not saying that he can't be. I just think that if you bring a guy in like Gavin Lux, I'd like him to be the good defensive player that he is, on top of the fact that he's a solid offensive threat, right? If he's DHing more times than he's out in the field, if he's producing, that's great. But a DH to me is, I don't know what everybody else's definition of a DH is. In 2024, he hit 10 home runs with the Dodgers in 487 plate appearances. He had, 24 doubles, right? So he had a 383 slug, 320 OBP. That's not DH to me. That's just not a DH to me, a full-time DH. And if that's the role that he's given, I'm going to ride with it. But I think that there are better options as of right now, and I think that's a testament to how solid our starting nine is. That's not a knock on Gavin Lux. I just think there are better options at the moment than Gavin Lux position-wise. DH, if you want to argue DH, you can argue DH. But, I trust that Jeimer Candelario is going to improve this year. And if Jeimer's not in the field, he's going to DH. So that's the only one where I think there could be some movement, and Lux goes and takes over for Jeimer at third base. But third base, again, position that he doesn't play. So You're asking Gavin Lux to do something that he's never done before, while also maintaining the fact that he's a solid offensive player. It's a lot to ask, and we'll see if he's going to be able to do it. I don't mean to say anything bad about Gavin Lux, and Kirby's right. They certainly don't go out and get a guy like Gavin Lux if they're not going to use him as much as they should. They're going to use Gavin Lux to the best of their ability. I just think that as of right now, when healthy, there are options out there.
Yeah, I tend to. The two positions we have circled for Gavin Lux are two positions he doesn't play. He's 47 career games at third base, outfield, and DH combined. 47 career games. And those are the positions we're asking him to play. We're not offering him second or shortstop. So I think it's less of an indictment on Gavin Lux and more of he's got to prove he can play a new position before I insert him in the lineup. Now, ideally, he blossoms at third base. He's as good of a defender as he was at second, and Jeimer's your DH hitting 30 home runs a year. That's perfect. Love it. Right now, I've seen Gavin Lux play third base once in the MLB. That's not enough for me to say he's our third baseman.
Yeah.
If he's going to be the DH, that's fine. I have a hard time believing they brought Gavin Lux in to be the DH. I think the versatility with the positions in the field would be why he was brought in here. Now, obviously, he could DH if he's the best hitting option when everyone else is out in the field, but I feel like you're, like Elliot said, taking away some of what you got him for if he's DHing. So, yeah, I don't know necessarily where he lands. He's going to play a ton. He's going to get a ton of at-bats. Injuries happen. Rotations happen. He's great against right-handed pitching. He's a good piece for the Reds to have. We're just Elliot and I are both saying at this point, I don't know where he fits into the starting lineup.
And like Kinner said earlier, spring training is about seeing what these guys have. So if he comes out, he balls out, he's playing third base, he's playing left field. If that's what he's doing during the spring and he's doing it great, then yeah, let's try it out. I'm not saying that I'm opposed to it. I'm just saying you paid Jamie Candelario a lot of money to be out in the field or at least contribute, and I have to trust that he's going to do that. Everyone tells me how much they believe in CES. I'm believing in CES right now too. I'm saying he's got a spot at first base. We have so many options out there, and that's why I think that, for those thinking Gavin Lux is going to save this team, I just think your expectations are a little bit too high.
And then the other question I have too, and again, this does sound this week like, man, these guys just do not like Gavin Lux. That is so far from the truth. We're just trying to put the puzzle together. You know what I mean? Like when you're putting the puzzle together, it's like, okay, this piece, I know it doesn't go to anything. We have not found one chunk of this puzzle that you could squeeze it in and it makes sense. It doesn't mean that it's not an important piece to the puzzle. It just doesn't make sense right now. I do wonder the motive behind pulling the trigger on a move like this, outside of the fact that, yes, he's a very good player, but how much of this too is the front office questioning how dependable Matt McClain can be from a health standpoint? Is that a fair assumption as well? When they pulled the trigger to do this, it's, hey, Matt McClain's fine now. He's okay now. But there is a little concern about the health of Matt McClain, although there's not reports out there. But at the same time, we are all super high on Matt McClain. But earlier we did our underrated. If you want to talk about some overrated talking points, keep in mind we were all super high on Christian Encarnacion Strand after 1 year. We were all super high on a lot of these young players after one season. And then they all took that sophomore slump. They all took that step back a little bit. Who's to say that this isn't going to be the sophomore slump season for Matt McClain, where we start to wonder, again, with more sample size of, well, maybe McClain's not the guy that we thought he was. I don't want to put that out there and act like I think that that's the case. But I do wonder if Gavin Lux is the ultimate insurance policy of, if Matt McClain's great and the big problem we have is, what do we, forcing Gavin Lux out there from time to time, that's a good problem to have. Yeah. If Matt McClain takes a step back or is injured and banged up and isn't available, well, guess what? Now you got Gavin Lux and you just keep on trucking. So I do wonder how much of that was an insurance policy more than anything else when you look at Matt McClain at second base.
I think that's right. I think that's exactly why they did it. I think
he gives you the outfield versatility India didn't necessarily give you for that same role.
Correct. I think that they brought in Gavin Lux, a guy that's very good at baseball, to be the guy that helps the Reds out when they need it. The past few years, I hate to keep saying it, but it's the number one reason why the Reds don't make the playoffs. It's because they don't stay healthy. No one stays healthy. If they were able to stay outside of Ellie and Steer, shout out to Ellie and Steer. Outside of that, we have a lot of questions, right? How do you supplement those questions? You get a bona fide answer in Gavin Lux. Jonathan India, like Jacob just said, was that guy. He was not supposed to be an everyday second baseman last year. That role was going to fluctuate all around the infield, outfield, doesn't matter. India was going to go everywhere. We lose a second baseman. Guess who plays second base? We got him right there. We have our answer. And that's what I really think Gavin Lux was. They know you can't have enough depth. You can have 500 guys and not have enough depth with this team, it feels like. Yeah. So Gavin Lux, I'm sure, was brought in as an insurance policy. I have no doubt in my mind that that's the case. I don't think Nick Krall looked at Gavin Lux and said, there's our starting left fielder. I don't believe that's the case. I think he could play in left field if you need him to play in left field the same way Spencer Steer does. But I don't think he looked at him and says, all right, that's our third baseman of the future. I think he probably came in and he said, this is a guy that's going to help out the Reds when they need it desperately. I also think it's somebody who can hit well, right? The Reds have lacked offense, and especially last year. This is somebody that's going to pick that up. He can hit consistently. He's not going to strike out a ton. That's what Gavin Lux is. So I think it's more in your camp, Kinner, than anything.
Yeah, and by the way, in debates that I have an opinion and Kirby has an opinion, Kirby's opinions are usually always going to be closer to right than mine. And so this wasn't me going at Kirby. I just want to make that clear, because Kirby brings up a great point when he says Nick Krall trading the pieces he did in the comp pick for Lux, that wasn't done just to sit him on the bench. There's a vision for him. We're just trying to figure out what the hell that is, because we could say, well, he's going to be the lineup every day against right-handed pitching. Well, then who are you benching? Who are you? You know what I mean? And you could say, well, the DH thing. But to Elliot's point, he's a good hitter, but he's not a that's not the type of hitter you bring in to be your DH, right? Like, so that's why there's just more to this. We're just all trying to figure it out at the end of the day. One thing Jacob brought up that I really liked, in the best case scenario of all of this, and it won't happen this way, but if the guy accidentally just turns into a guy that could actually play third base really well. I love the idea of Candelario being your DH, a guy that could hit 30 home runs, as you mentioned, being your dominant DH. And then you have a very good defensive middle infield, assuming Lux can transition to third and play at that. But there's been no reports of him getting time at third throughout spring. But if he does start to get time at third, that is something to keep an eye on as well, if that is the case. That's the most interesting storyline for me. The Gavin Lux storyline throughout spring and his role for the Reds in 25 is the most interesting storyline to me outside of anything else.
Jeimer Candelario, I want DHing. I don't want him in the field.
I do too. He's too valuable as a bat to risk the injuries like we did last year. We saw what happened. He stopped being able to see the baseball. I mean, I don't know what it was, but playing defense eliminated one of our best hitters.
So if Gavin Lux is able to play third base, great. I am very, very happy to be wrong.
Yeah.
Him and CES. That'd
be awesome.
These are two guys that I don't know what my confidence in them is. If they're able to prove me wrong, prove me wrong. I love to be wrong.
No, you don't.
No, I don't. But I'd be willing to be wrong. I'd be willing to be wrong.
You'd be willing to be wrong for a Reds playoff series victory.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
There you go. All right, off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kinner, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett with you here. We'll step away for a few moments. We're going to do a little buy or sell, talk a little college football. We got Bearcat basketball talk coming up around the corner. We'll have more off the bench when we return. All right, and we are back. This is the I Hate Gavin Lux show right here on 1410 ESPN Radio and Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. But now off the bench, happy to be with you. Justin Kinner, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett with you here. We're going to talk Bearcat basketball. Hudson Keene, again, from Chatterbox Bearcats, going to join us coming up here to close out the radio portion here in just a little bit. But I know Elliot itching to talk Bearcat basketball. So
I live for it. I live to talk about the Cats. Watched the game last night at a bar, and it was just, there was a lot of Bearcats fans in there. The collective groan when they went on, I don't know what, I don't know the exact number. The Bearcats are up 47-41, and I think West Virginia went on like a 30-7 run to end the game, and it's just like, it's just so disappointing what's happened this year. So disappointing. They were supposed to be better. They're not. It seems like nearly everyone has regressed. I know Jizzle's played well as of late, but he was missing for a large portion of this season, arguably the most important portion of this season. So it's frustrating all around. We got a free throw shooter in Dylan Mitchell. He shoots.
Can you call him a free throw shooter?
No, he shoots 38%. He shoots 38% at the line. How are you supposed to win basketball games when you shoot 38% at the line?
I don't think you are.
38%. I'm not saying I'm an athlete. I can make at least 60% of my free throws. 60%. I think they were 27% the free throw line last night. That's why you lose games.
I think we all need to hit the gym and do a free throw contest.
Anytime you want. I'd love
money
to.
where your mouth is.
I'm an abysmal free throw shooter. Abysmal. Absolutely terrible. It was hack a Shaq when I played basketball.
Yeah.
Oh, send Tissa to the line. He'll miss both.
Off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Let's do a little buy or sell, or not buy or sell. I'm sorry, news or not news. Sorry, I get my time filler segments mixed up. So, news or not news. News or not news, guys. How about this one? Edge rusher, according to Sports Illustrated, Joey Bosa, the former NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year and 5-time Pro Bowler, is likely to be released before he collects a $12 million roster bonus next month, according to ESPN's Dan Graziano. News or not news that Joey Bosa could be hitting the free agent market?
I think it's news.
I'd say it's pretty massive news.
I definitely think that's news. I think Joey Bosa, though he's battled injuries for 2 of the last 3 years, played 14 games this last season, but 5-9 the 2 before that. Obviously, a worry as you get up into your 30s. He's 29, will be 30 by the start of next season, but he's still a very, very good player when he's out there. And to be cut and put on the open market, who knows what that contract will be?
Yeah.
Coming off, injuries and slightly below Joey Bosa level seasons, but we all know what he was, especially when he came into the league. He's a force off the edge, and the Chargers are already moving on from Khalil Mack. He's going to be on a different team next year, not cutting Joey Bosa, or it seems like they're going to cut Joey Bosa. I don't know what they're going to do with all that cap space, but it seems like they're overhauling that thing in LA. But Joey Bosa, 5 sacks last year in 14 games, 6.5 the year before in 9, skipping over the 5-game season, 11, 7.5, 10.5, 3 years in a row. This guy gets production, and he still does. I think a contender, will be picking up Joey Bosa, and he'll make a difference for them as they, try to push for the playoffs.
Yeah, 5-time Pro Bowler. I think this would be a great get for somebody. He's still pretty young. I think defensive players can go a little longer than advertised. I know Luke Kuechly had an early retirement, but there's a lot of defensive players that are older out there that can go. He's been in the league 9 years, 29 years old. Is that right? Is he only 29?
Yeah, turns 30 before week 1, though.
So I don't know. I would take a chance on Joey Bosa. Of course I would. Of course I would.
When you say you would take a chance with Joey Bosa, does that mean you would like your team to take a chance with Joey Bosa back to Ohio?
Number pending.
Sure. I'd take Joey. What do you think the number would be?
I think it could get Steve. I don't know. I don't know how people are going to view the injuries. I think this is always a concern when you get someone that's a little older hitting the open market with, kind of tailing off statistically over the last couple of years. I just don't know what people are going to offer him. I wouldn't be shocked if someone comes with a $20 million offer for a 2-year deal for Joey Bosa. That's a huge name. So, maybe, and in that case, obviously, I would price the Bengals out. If we're going to spend $20+ million on an edge rusher, it better be Trey Hendrickson. But I would certainly love to have a Joey Bosa here. I think that would be a pretty cool Sam Hubbard replacement.
Yeah, it looks like the Chargers they're trying to get out ahead of it. Like, you don't want to bring him back and then the decline hit you all at once, and then you can't maximize the, obviously the value of it. So I think this is them trying to jump out early. Could they look silly and he go have a dominant season elsewhere? Probably. But get younger, get someone that's more reliable, and that might be their thinking as well. But the Chargers, their dynamic of how they've kind of shifted through this Harbaugh era after 1 year. They came in and got rid of all of their offensive talent and said, okay, we're going to put all our money on the defensive side of the ball, figure out who we are after 1 year of Harbaugh, and then reevaluate, reassess the roster from there. But I thought that was an interesting headline that came out of yesterday. News, not news. A name that you're really high on, Jake, that you've brought up for the Bengals a few times. If this name is available at 17, maybe. Do you know? Yeah, either way.
I think I know where you're going.
Character concerns are being brought up for quite a few players, and that's this time of year, of course. You can't tell what's true and what's not, but the Bengals have taken some chances on character concerned guys in the past. The one that's bit him in the ass most recently, unfortunately, is Burton, as we've talked a lot about. But a name that Jacob's been really high on when we've talked about some of the possibilities for the Bengals at number 17, James Pierce, one of those names that is on the list, along with Walter Nolan, Mike Green, and some others. News or not news that some of these premier names that could be available at 17, talent-wise, you want them. Attitude-wise, do you? Are you concerned about these attitude, character concerns? News or not news?
It's news because I think the Bengals are concerned. I don't care at all. I want good players. I want to take good players wherever they are in the draft. And if that's at 17 with Walter Nolan or James Pierce, I'm over the moon. Even Mike Green, All three names you said there are three guys who are high on my list for the Bengals at pick 17, and I just immediately think that these three guys must be who Howie Roseman wants. I mean, James Pierce Jr. was a coin flip for Abdul Carter coming into draft season, or coming into this football season before the draft, and now we've seen him fall down into where we're talking about taking him at 17, and then Daniel Jeremiah on Monday had James Pierce completely out of the first round on his mock draft. That would be insane for an edge rusher who has the body, is going to test out of the gym, and has 3 years of production at Tennessee. In what world does that guy fall out of the first round? The other two, I feel like there's a little bit more reason for concern. Mike Green, already one of the smaller edge rushers in the class. If he has character concerns at a school like Marshall, maybe his talent just overshadowed everything there, and they were forced to play him, and obviously would do some more digging there. Walter Nolan, we already knew about. Walter Nolan was the #1 player in the country out of high school, committed to Texas A&M, had some blow-ups with the coaches and donors on the staff about NIL agreements and playing time agreements, and he transferred to Ole Miss. But he had a great year this year. Lane Kiffin said he was an honorary captain for a couple games. The teammates loved him at Ole Miss. They brought in a lot of guys to Ole Miss this year with character concerns who really buttoned it up. So I lean that he might be a little bit reformed, removed from that part of his career. But James Pierce, I couldn't care less. Every report out of Tennessee is that he's the hardest worker, first one in, last one out. All these character concerns, some of them are bubbling up from high school and other things like that off the field. I don't care. Unless I hear it from a Tennessee coach, that's where I'll bring it in. But if they're saying he's first one in, last one out, and he has 3 years of sack production as a dominant edge rusher at Tennessee, I want him on my team.
17.5 sacks in his last 2 seasons in college. If you have character concerns and you give me 17.5 sacks, I'm all good. I really am. I'm all good. That might be a controversial thing to say. Have they gone specifics with the? No. So it's
like the reports are like locker room anger, screaming at teammates, like fights at practice. That all to me very easily could also fall in the category of crazy competitor.
Yeah, wants to win.
And he's a leader. So I don't know. I haven't heard anything that's Jermaine Burton level concern about characters. So I'm removing all that stuff. I hope it is a concern for the first 16 people in the draft. I just hope the Bengals don't dwell on that when a guy has 17 sacks in the last 2 seasons.
I know it didn't work with Burton, but there are guys who have had character concerns in the NFL, and they've worked out and they've made great careers, Hall of Fame careers. So I'm not going to get overly worked up about non-specific accusations of character concerns. To me, that's a nothing burger. If he has 17.5 sacks in 2 years, you bring him home. Now, I will say, if you can get a little value, let's say he goes to the second round. Maybe we'll start making stories. Yeah. If you guys want to make stories, we'll wait. Second round.
Yeah, I'm all in on James Pierce in the second round. Oh boy, that'd be crazy.
No, and that's why I just found it interesting that's a name that's brought up with that, just because we've talked in the past. Has Burton scared the Bengals away from being aggressive and taking chances? And that's
something else that goes with this point exactly is, what have we talked about for the last week about the Bengals? Joe Burrow brought it up on Pardon My Take. He said the Eagles are paying everybody. Why don't we just do that? Why are the Eagles able to pay everybody? Because they hit in the draft. How do you get superstars in the draft? You draft great players that fall down the board because there's some character concerns, and you get them to buy into your team and be the player they're supposed to be. They got Jalen Carter at 9. He was supposed to go #1, and he fell because of character concerns. And that is way more than anything we're talking about with Walter Nolan or James Pierce. So you have to take great players, regardless of what the off-the-field concerns are, and you have to be good enough coaches and leaders in the locker room to get them to buy in, because that's how you get value in the middle and late rounds of the draft. If Jermaine Burton worked out and he's that first round value that we're talking about, going into the draft, coming out of the draft last year, then we're not talking nearly as much about how we need to keep Tee Higgins. Obviously that didn't work out, but you have to keep trying that, because that's the only way you get value in the later rounds.
Yeah, the other thing too, when you look at the Eagles, they could take chances on guys because they have so much talent around. Yeah. That if they take a chance, it doesn't work, you're not out anything. The Bengals, I thought the Burton thing was I think the Burton thing hurt them so bad is because that was their option. That was their only option at that time, because at the time a year ago, even at the draft, we're going 1 more year with Tee Higgins. This is the plan. All right, 1 more year with Tee Higgins. Burton's our third. He gets his rookie year in, and then he transitions to the #2 wide receiver, and then that got the Eagles, if talk about certain guys that don't work out, there's so much depth around it. But again, with a guy like Pierce, if it's attitude problems at practice, luckily you got Zach Taylor, a culture guy, so you're good.
That's right. Pizza parties.
Yes. So ping pong tables are back. So
right.
they learned their lesson. Don't take that away. I know we're going to be joined by Hudson Keene with Chatterbox Bearcats coming up here in just a few moments, but we'll continue on until we get the green light that he's on and hanging out with us. College basketball, news or not news, Cooper Flagg let it be known that, he might be willing to return for another season at Duke. And, of course, you have one side that's saying that's the dumbest thing ever. There's no way in hell he's coming back. And others are like, well, in today's NIL world, it's not like you're coming back for absolutely nothing. News or not news, Cooper Flagg saying he might be interested in coming back for another year at Duke.
Not news. He's the number 1 overall pick in the draft. He's been the number 1 overall pick in the draft for about 4 years now. So, yeah, I don't think there's any chance that Cooper Flagg's coming back. Would he like to? Sure, I'm sure I'd like to come back if I played a couple games as the best player in the country in Cameron Stadium. So I don't blame him for saying that, but I certainly don't think there's any chance he's back at Duke next year.
Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, it's free money, I guess. If you want to go back to Duke, you want to take a little bit of money.
But so is going first overall.
Sure, and that's unfortunately where he's going to go. So I don't think this is news. I mean, it just doesn't matter. Especially, let's say they win a championship. I think Duke is one of the few teams that could win this year. Yeah. Could you imagine a better career than that? One and done championship and go number 1 overall? Sounds good to me.
Melo almost did.
Anthony Davis, did he do it?
Yeah.
Anthony Davis did it.
What's funny is, too, you have Oklahoma City Thunder right now, who they're one of the best teams in the NBA, number 1 in the West right now, and they have just their roster is just nothing but youth up and down. They have so many draft picks that they've accrued over the years, and a lot of them are obviously slotted draft picks, so it doesn't matter where they finish. It's where the teams that they got those trade picks from finish. And they could be high high up in the lottery conversation. They could potentially come away with the Cooper Flagg. Look, a lot of players who are fringe guys of, oh man, he could be taken late first round, early second. I could see those guys saying, hey, I'm going to come back and I'm going to get millions of dollars to come back to college and play for one more year and give me a chance to move up the board for the next draft. Cooper Flagg, there's nothing else to prove. There's nothing. No. He's in the middle of his freshman year in college. He's having the time of his life. Of course, right now it feels you're emotionally locked in. Man, I could come back for another year. This is great. But the season ends, your agent's in your ear, your family's in your ear, and you realize, oh, wow, the draft's coming up in a few months, and I can go make even way more than I'm making now. Yeah, I don't think it's news. I think I think a lot of these guys enjoy themselves, but I think he's going to the NBA. He's going to be the number 1 pick, as you guys mentioned. So, nonetheless, I'm not diving into that being news either.
No.
Continuing down, news or not news, speaking of the NBA always tinkering with this All-Star game. It was the second least viewed All-Star game of all time this past weekend. They made such drastic changes that I think the only reason it wasn't the least watched All-Star game of all time is because some people were curious enough just to tune in to see what the hell it was all about. But the second least watched All-Star game of all time. News or not news that next year the NBA is tossing out the idea of a possible one-on-one tournament with $1 million being on the line for the winner. News or not news?
Not news, because none of the stars would do it. Less people would do that than do the dunk contest. No way Steph Curry and LeBron James are signing up to get cooked by Peyton Pritchard 11-1. The guys that would win a one-on-one tournament in the NBA are not all-stars. So I think that would be one of the least interesting ways they could go. Would it be great if the stars did it? Yeah. There's no way the stars did it. We saw the WNBA try to do this, and Breanna Stewart, the best player MVP of the WNBA, lost 11-0 in the first round. So I don't think there's any way stars would agree to do this. We're risking so much more than they could possibly gain in a one-on-one game.
And you can't incentivize it like, hey, winner gets $1 million. Oh, in the league where Tyler Hero gets $500 trillion, $1 million if you win this one. Okay, yeah, this isn't news, and it's unfortunate, but the NBA players just have to buy into it, and until they do, this debate will go on until the end of time. It's just the All-Star and the NBA All-Star game, the Pro Bowl. People don't care, and that's viewers, that's the players. Nobody cares about these events. I think it was Ryan Russillo I was listening to earlier this week. What these events are is they're corporate sponsors.
Yeah.
So corporate sponsors is what it is, and if you like seeing Drewski do a couple 25-minute skits, go ahead and tune in. But if you don't, you're probably not going to see the basketball that you want.
I think we lost Kinner.
Lost Kinner?
That's a shame.
Oh, no.
Oh,
is he back? Is he back?
I don't know what happened. Everything just froze, so I just reconnected and we're back in. Sorry about that.
We're rocking and rolling now.
So But so was it? It was not news, right? The
It
NBA
was.
It was
Not
not
news.
news. It was confirmed not news.
Fair enough. Fair enough. We got our guests lined up. We good to go?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
I don't think not. I don't think yet.
Now, so with the, again, by the way, for those listening in Dayton, that little hiccup right there, just lost connection, but we're back and rolling. The news, not news. The NBA possibly experimenting with the idea of a one-on-one tournament at the All-Star break next year, the All-Star game event next season. Of course, I agree. I don't think it's news. The whole reason that the dunk contest is fantastic. Egos are involved, brands are involved, and LeBron losing a dunk contest hurts his brand. What do you think it's going to do to his brand if he gets crossed up by some 22-year-old that's not even an all-star, because half the time these all-stars don't even participate in these events? It's not, and forget that. Even if Steph and LeBron went one-on-one, it hurts the brand of LeBron to be crossed up and beat one-on-one by Steph Curry. Like, it's just, this stuff's not going to happen. I think there's so many fixes that they keep tossing out there when the only thing they need to do is look at these spoiled brat jerks of athletes and say, do your damn job. Go out there and play hard for the fans. Like, not everything has to be, what do we need to do for you? How about you just have a little appreciation and respect for the league that was built around the fans tuning in to support you? But these athletes have gotten so big and so much money that everything is beneath them. It drives me nuts. I'm tired of hearing about all these ideas to fix the All-Star game. Someone just needs to have the guts to look at these athletes and say, just do your damn job. Just go out there and play hard for the love of the game and stop being such divas. The NBA drives me nuts when it comes to that, more than any other sport out there.
I feel like they fixed it, and then they went away from the form that worked. The year after Kobe died, they had all 4 of the quarters. The winner of the quarter donated a certain amount of money to a charity of their choice, their captain's choice.
Yeah.
Then they added, I think it was 24 points to the finals, the leader score at the end, and that was the Elam ending race in the fourth quarter. And these guys, Kyle Lowry took like 3 charges.
Yeah.
Those guys were playing hard. I think you do the charity donation. There's no number that can get all-stars on the Supermax contracts to buy into playing a game.
Yeah.
There's not a number. $1 million doesn't do it. $2 million doesn't do it. So
No.
I think the way you do that is you bring in a bunch of charities and put the kids in the front row and
right.
make LeBron, who doesn't care about the All-Star game, look the kid's charity in the face when he's not trying.
That's a good
So
bit.
if we line it all up like they did that one year and have all the charities there, I think that would be phenomenal, and the players would try like they did the one year they had that formula.
That's a good bit. Cameron, let's go to break real quick so we can get Hudson figured out. So ESPN 1410, Wing AM, Chatterbox Sports Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. We will be right back. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. ESPN 1410 Wing AM Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. We are now joined by a very special guest, the great Houdini, as it were. Hudson Keene, at Hudson Keene on Twitter, co-host Chatterbox Bearcats. Houdini, how we feeling, buddy? But real quick, actually, before you answer, I told you when I asked you to come on, this was either going to be the season's back and we're more alive than ever, or this is going to be the morning segment. So are we going to be morning today?
Apparently so, man, because it's a shame I had to come on under these circumstances. Wouldn't it be nice to have nice things? And we had what a way to crumble too, Elliot. I mean, the way that they did it was even terrible. I mean, a 15-3 or 17-3 run by West Virginia just to seal our fate. We are what we thought we were after that losing streak. Nothing changed. We're a bottom feeder in the Big 12. It's unfortunate, but yeah, we're feeling pretty good. Other than that,
I was at a bar last night, and we left. Me and a couple buddies. We left the game with about 30 seconds left. Somebody hit a three, and we were down. I honestly don't even know. I got in the car. I was listening to Dan Horde and Terry. We're down 9. We're down 9 with about 10 seconds. I'm like, all right, let's put on some music. But I'm like, you know what? I'll just let it roll, and then I'll be good. Dan Skillings hits a 3. Dan Skillings steals, hits another 3. West Virginia just forgot how to inbound the basketball. We get the ball somehow with a chance to tie the game. In a game where I didn't think it could be possibly more frustrating, they lost in a way that was so frustrating that it makes me want to get, quote, pissed. I'm pissed. Are you pissed?
Yeah, you could say I'm pissed off. And yeah, I did the same thing. I started setting up for the show.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I hear my girlfriend yell from downstairs, and she doesn't even watch basketball. So I'm like, something must have happened that's crazy. I come down, all of a sudden it's a 3-point game. They're reviewing the Jizzle James thing. Dan Skillings had, 2 miraculous threes within 5 seconds. And then Betsy had a wide open look. And I'm on my feet at that point. He's wide open. The second it left his hands, you knew it was way short. He almost airballed it. And,
terrible.
People are piling on Betsy. That's not why we lost the game. The fact that we covered is shocking. So kudos to anybody that got him at plus 3.5. I had to take money line and go down with this ship.
Let me ask you this. We've been back and forth in the season, and I've seen some of your memes, very good memes, at Hudson Keene on Twitter. The season's dead, the season's back, the season's dead, the season's back. I don't know, at some point, the season technically still isn't dead. We know that. If you win 5 in a row, you beat Houston on the road, you win a couple conference tournament games, you're still in it. At the same time, there's no reason to expect anything different. We know who this team is. So I'll ask you this. Is this team, drastically underperforming and they're going to be better next year? Or is this just a bad group of guys we got?
I think there's a lot of issues going on. It starts with Wes Miller, obviously. He's four seasons in. We haven't made the tournament. It's not that hard. It's not that high of a bar to get into the tournament. And to your point, as far as, yeah, sure, if we rattle off 5 straight and beat Houston on the road, I'd be pretty damn shocked if that happened. And just looking at the wins that we have this year, we are now technically, 0-9 in quad 1 wins, or in quad 1 games this season. Yeah. UCF has now dropped into the quad 2 territory. I think they've lost 7 straight, including getting just destroyed by Oklahoma State, one of the worst teams in the Big 12. He's only beaten one team that's projected in the field this season, in BYU. So we're not beating good teams. So to look at the rest of the schedule and be like, oh, we could win out, that's a fool's errand, not going to happen. It's just unfortunate, but it comes down to roster construction. I don't think that we have the talent or the collective talent that meshes together well enough. And Wes hasn't proved to be able to win big games and coach the guys up. So he's going to have a whole lot to do in the portal and figure out which guys we want to bring back that are on this roster. Jizzle James, obviously, is the main guy that you want to retain. And we're already doing the song and dance that we did last season that Jizzle James is going to be leaving for a bag somewhere. His dad's Edgerrin James. I think he's probably got $30 million in a trust fund, so I'm not too worried about that. But we will see what happens. But yeah, Wes and staff have a ton of work to do for next season.
I just don't like, they don't have shot makers and they don't have a big man. So heading into next year, hopefully, again, God willing, Sean Abayev comes here and he saves the day. But there still has to be other scorers on this team. I think Jizzle's good, and I want Jizzle back. Jizzle was missing for a large portion of this season, though. I mean, the first 6 games of the conference, he wasn't there. He didn't make shots. Now, obviously, he's making shots. The team looks significantly better when he's making shots. But heading into next year, what's more important in your eyes? A premium second guy to score, assuming Sean's going to be that guy, or a big man? Because no disrespect to Aziz, he had 10 rebounds last night. He's 7 feet tall. He's averaging 5 rebounds on the year. It's just not good. I mean, it's not good. You can't trust him to make a free throw. And saying that, he's the best free throw shooter on the team. So in your eyes, big man or premier scorer off the bench or something similar to it?
Could we get both? We can't
get both. You can't get both.
If Sean Abayev is what we think he is and what he's shown, hell, he's got some phenomenal mixtapes all over Twitter and TikTok.
Yeah, he does.
If he is what we think he is, and they get Jizzle James back too, then you got 2 guards that can certainly score the rock. Getting an interior big that has any semblance of an offensive game, it would be fantastic if we could even get a stretch 5, somebody that can knock down threes. I know that might be asking a little bit too much, but if you look at historically the UC teams that have been good, we always have one of those big men that can put the ball in the basket. Your Gary Clarks, your Yancey Gates, your Trey Scotts even, or just somebody with a high motor too. Aziz Bandaogo is what he is, but he is a negative on the offensive end. I mean, when he gets the ball, you might as well just throw it into the rafters. It's not going anywhere good from an offensive standpoint when Aziz Bandaogo has the ball. And it doesn't help, Elliot, when your other big, Dylan Mitchell, can't shoot the ball past 5 feet either. So the spacing is just a major issue with this team. And I wish we would have saw it, in the beginning of the season. I'm sure you're doing the same thing. I'm like, this could be a top 15 team.
It was. They were ranked 15th.
Elliot, do you have any – I was trying to think of this, and I was asking Chuck, if you've ever been, with the expectations that were put on this team, disappointed to this degree? Because I can't remember it as a UC fan. I really can't.
No, and it's like it hasn't even been usually if your team's riddled with injuries, that's one thing, right? The Reds had such high projection or high expectations coming into last year. Every single player got hurt. The Bearcats have been mostly healthy. I know you can say Hickman wasn't healthy to start the year, but he's been no disrespect, absolutely terrible. It's just been Simas Lukosius, bad. Aziz, bad. Dylan Mitchell, 38% at the free throw line. Day Thomas, can't make layups. He's been better lately. You had Jizzle, gone for a large portion of the season. It's just been every single player except, I guess you can argue Jizzle's certainly been better the past few games, and Jizzle and Dylan have both been fine. But the rest of the team, it's just like, what do we have here? How did we get this bad? And the only thing I can think of is the coach. And so to answer your question, no. I've never been as disappointed as I am. It's just absolutely brutal. Speaking of disappointment, I'd argue the most disappointing player on the team this year, Dan Skillings. Dan Skillings not being able to contribute to this team, seemingly outside of those 2 miracle shots last night, which I don't even count. You can throw those shots away. Outside of those 2 things, he's been just nothing. What do you think happened to Dan Skillings?
Guy Paul Frischner asked me the same thing. I'm like, I have no idea. He would have been the one guy that I would have thought coming into this season, you know what you're getting from a Dan Skillings.
Yeah.
He's going to do all the dirty work, the Inspector Gadget layups, deflections, good defense. We've seen none of that. I mean, he's playing like a freshman out there, just low IQ basketball plays, turnovers. He's a turnstile on defense all of a sudden. I don't think that's the big thing on Twitter and social media is that he got his bag and now he doesn't care to try in basketball. That is certainly not true. At least I don't think so. He had hopes to go to the NBA, as we all saw, the headlines in the offseason that he was going to be leaving to go to the NBA. That certainly is not going to be the case. Now you got to look at a guy in Wes Miller and his staff, got to say, do we want to bring Dan Skillings back? What he has shown here in the last, 2 months, it's been some of the worst basketball. I mean, we're going to guys like Josh Reed and Tyler Betsy over Dan Skillings. If you would have told me that before the season, I would have said you're crazy. So I don't know what happened. He certainly is trying to force it. After he went into that skid, he's certainly trying to force his offensive game, and he's kind of being a ball stopper there. So I see what he's trying to do, but it's just bad basketball. I mean, he's just playing bad basketball.
Which country do you think he's going to play professional basketball in?
Oh, God, I'm not. Maybe the Philippines. Maybe that right now, as his trajectory is. With Manny Pacquiao maybe on that roster.
Yeah, I had Uzbekistan, but we'll see. We'll see where he ends up. You mentioned Wes. And I think it's been like I know he hasn't beaten anybody this year. He hasn't beaten anybody ever. In his entire career, he's never beaten anybody. He's 7-35 in quad one wins. He's 7-35. The issue for all of us right now is A, nobody wants to pay him $10 million. And B, you have a guy in Sean Abayev who could potentially make this team a tournament team for the first time in 150 years. Like, that's what you're losing if you miss out on Wes. Are you willing to cut ties with him right now, pay him $10 million, but we keep, we keep Sean Abayev if he stays? Like, what's in your mind, what's the move? You keep Wes or you fire Wes?
Oh, if it was up to me and, I had a trust fund or something, my dad was in the oil business, yes, we would be signing a check right now to fire Wes Miller. And we love Wes. Like, this isn't a pile on Wes thing. At some point, you are what you are. It's 4 seasons, a presidential term, and you're 7-35 in quad one, 0 of which are at home. Pretty hard to do. As far as the, keep Wes just to get Sean Abayev, I totally disagree. One guy isn't going to change everything. I mean, you can look at Rutgers right now. They got 2 freshmen that are projected to be picked in the top 5 of the NBA draft. They're below 500.
Yeah.
I love Sean Abayev. I'm glad that he's coming, and Wes Miller isn't going anywhere, unfortunately. But a meritocracy, guys. 4 seasons. Can't get it done. It's time to go. But unfortunately, this is what we're dealing with. So bring in Sean Abayev, bring in Tillery. Hopefully he can totally overhaul this thing. I guess the nice thing with the portal, the way the portal is in college basketball, you can totally flip your roster. Wes just hasn't been able to shown to coach these guys up. It seems like most of the players regress under Wes.
It's absolutely brutal. And one guy, real quick, one guy that's regressed as well, Simas Lukosius. Simas Lukosius down the stretch of last season was phenomenal. He was making every big shot you needed a guy to make. This year, an absolute non-factor. Do you think that's because of injury, or do you think that's just he maybe got a little bit of a hot stretch towards the NIT?
I think a lot of it has to do with just defenses understanding his game. They know that he's not going to be able to get by them. Yeah. So they're just guarding him all over the three-point line. That was really where his offense was. And he's struggling. And I think it has a lot to do with the spacing, like I said earlier. When you got Aziz Bandaogo, Dylan Mitchell, Dan Skillings, guys that can't shoot the rock from the perimeter, it's going to clog up the lane, and they're going to be able to get out on a guy like Simas Lukosius because they're not worried about Aziz Bandaogo making a hook shot in the paint. So I think there's a lot of reasons why Simas hasn't been what he was. I still would have loved to see him last night in a do-or-die game as one of our leaders, a senior, just to see if he could figure it out. Because he did go 3 of 6 the game prior from 3, and his shoulder was falling off. So we could have used him last night, that's for sure.
2 more questions for you. If you had to have a pie chart, I give you Wes Miller, Scott Satterfield, John Cunningham. Who gets the most blame?
I got to blame the guy that hired both of them, right?
I think
John
that's
Cunningham.
The case. I think that's the case. I think that's the case. It's just unacceptable. It's unacceptable at this point.
Yeah, it's like, and you know what's crazy, though, is I need to get into the sports industry outside of podcasting and just get these locked-in contracts because every one of those guys has an absurd buyout. That's why we're kind of stuck with what we have. And, people in the chat yesterday were clamoring to fire Cunningham or all this stuff. Unfortunately, it's not going to happen from everything that I've seen, inside sources, quote unquote, that he's in pretty good standing with the program. But the 2 biggest hires, arguably the biggest job of a athletic director, is to make sure you got good standing with the football and basketball program. It might be a little too early for Scott Satterfield. This is going to be a huge season. But we said the same thing about Wes in year 4, and look where we're at. So
It doesn't change. It's just a never-ending circle of pain here in Cincinnati. It's absolutely brutal. But I want to do the thing with you. So let's do it. We got 5 games left. TCU at home, Baylor, Houston on the road, Kansas State, Oklahoma State. If you win those 5, you in?
Oh, we're in. We're in. If you win those 5, we're in. We don't have any bad losses. Wes Miller is the quad 2 coach of the year in my book, in my personal ranking. We don't have any bad losses. Yeah, if we beat, at this point, TCU and Kansas State are no easy wins, and that would be a Baylor and a Houston. I don't even know why we're talking about this, Elliot, because it's not going to happen. But
we got to talk about it. How many more times will we be dead and or alive by the end of this season?
I think it's going to end on Saturday. I think we lose to TCU at home.
No.
Yep.
Oh, no.
Yep. Jamie Dixon's going to bury us, fellas.
Oh, if that's the case, I'm not going to be able to deal with it. All right. Well, I'll tell you what. Hudson Keen, at Hudson Keen on Twitter, co-host of Chatterbox Bearcats. When's your guys' next episode?
We'll be doing it Saturday after TCU.
Oh boy.
Bagpipes will probably be playing. And Elliot, I kept the hat on. I saw what you did to Sam LeCure and his hairline, so this hat is glued to my head for the whole program.
Wait, let's see. Let's give the people something they want to see. Let's take the hat off. There it is. There it is. There it is. There it is. Well, I'll tell you what. I'm sorry to bother you on a work day. I know all you guys have work. Asking everybody to come on the show at 10 is difficult. So thank you for making the time, Hudson. By the way, are we changing your – how many times have you changed your @ on Twitter now? I feel like you've changed it quite some time.
Yeah,
how many times? Are you going undercover? Are you going undercover?
Confusing.
What's going on here?
Well, I was trying to keep, my boss to only know what I do between the cubicle walls, okay? And then it started getting confusing because people were like, dude, they were like, Paul doesn't even know what your name is, man. So my actual name is Hudson Klauke.
I knew
Middle name is Keen. Middle name is Keen. That's why it is the Twitter handle. But I had Barry before, which is an old nickname. But yeah, I'm not that interesting. I don't have like 7 names or aliases or anything like that.
I think you do. You got Houdini, you got Barry, you got Klauke, you got everything. I didn't want to call you that because I know I listened to the Rebound Rundown. You were great on it, and I was like, he called you Hudson Keen. I'm like, all right, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to roll with it. So that's fine by me. Listen, every superhero needs a little bit of an alias there. All right, Houdini, check him out. Chatterbox Bearcats, he will be live Saturday. Saturday they are live after the win against TCU. Thank you for coming out, man, and making the time for us.
Yeah, thanks, man. It was fun.
We'll see you, buddy. ESPN 1410 Wing AM. Justin, did you go back and watch the end of that Bearcats game yet?
I'm back.
Oh, he's back. He's back.
Yeah, we're good. You got to hit the power button, on there. No, I did not. I read about it, though. I just went and read about it. And you kind of lightly.
I texted Jacob, and I think we were all texting in the Chatterbox chat last night, too. It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. And he said it there, too. Like, part of having, good expectations is every fan, right? Every fan has somewhat high expectations for their team. There's some exceptions to that rule. If you know you're going to be bad for a year, you know that. But generally, you have I have high expectations for the Reds, and their ceiling's what, 80 wins? Realistically, what's the ceiling?
I wouldn't say the ceiling's 80 wins.
The over/under is 78.5. So I'm going to say that the ceiling's not as high as it could possibly be. Everybody's got high expectations. The Bengals.
I'd say 90. I'd say 90 is a fair ceiling for them.
I'd go in the middle. I'd say about 85 wins is the ceiling.
Like the Bengals, Super Bowl expectations. It hurts so much worse as a fan when teams don't live up to it.
Yeah.
And the Bearcats haven't lived up to it. At football or basketball. It's been terrible. You have the Reds, haven't lived up to it. Last year, they did not live up to it. The Bengals, 2 years now, missing the playoffs, haven't lived up to it. It's just soul crushing, and that's why I'm kind of in a bad mood today because a part of it is just it's like the Xavier Musketeers. They haven't lived up to expectations this year. They still have a chance for the tournament, but still haven't lived up to that expectation that a Sean Miller brings. And it's just being a sports fan here, man. When do we get something?
Yeah.
When do we get a bone? Give us a bone. And I know Reed does this to me all the time, and that's fair by Reed. You went to the Super Bowl. 100% you did. I'm very happy that we went to the Super Bowl. I'm not saying I'm not. I would like to win. I would like to win the championship. I'd like to be there. And until I get there, I'm just going to sit here and rant about it. So if you guys don't like my rant, I apologize. But it's just, I'm so frustrated with everything. If the Reds are bad this year, I don't know what I'm going to do, guys. I mean, I got to pick something else. I can't sit here.
Something other than sports?
Yeah, like I got to pick. I got to do something else. Because I just legitimately, it bums me out talking about it. And I think that's what, I don't know if Justin feels this way for his teams or Jacob feels this way for the Bengals. Like, talking about the Reds and Bearcats and Bengals as much as we do, it kind of like not lessens my fandom, but it changes my fandom. And it makes it more frustrating than anything. Like, if I was just a fan of a team and I didn't have to talk about it every day, I think I'd still feel better. But the fact that I have to sit here and talk about the Bearcats losing every single quad one game they play, I have to talk about the Bengals missing the Super Bowl. I have to talk about the Reds never making the playoffs. It's so much worse.
Well, let's pick up with this. We'll step away for a few moments, come back and pick up with this. Let me ask you, I know this may sound like a silly question. It's going to sound like an absolute dumb question, but being a Dodgers fan or being a Reds fan, considering what could happen this upcoming season, which fan base do you think is going to have a more enjoyable upcoming season?
I don't
Sounds
think
like
that's
a weird
terrible
question. I'll explain it when we come back, more off the bench when we return. All right, and we welcome you back off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Shout out to Hudson Kane with Chatterbox Bearcats for coming on, hanging out with Elliot, talking all things, of course, Cincinnati Bearcat basketball. Elliot started the show in a little bit of a bad mood, and he went on that rant right before we took a little bit of a break. Frustrated, just saying how much it's like if the Reds are bad this year, it's just going to absolutely be brutal. But we got it. You asked us about our expectations for our teams. I do think it's different. Our expectations for our teams are, I mean, this sounds silly based on the expectations for the team. I know this sounds weird. Like, I'm an Ohio State football fan, and it was so cool watching them win the national championship. But I did realize when I watched them win the national championship this year, I was happy. It was cool. It was exciting. But it is nothing like what I think it's going to be like when I watch the Reds win a World Series one day. It was nothing like, don't make fun of me, like if I ever watched the Browns actually get to the Super Bowl or win a Super Bowl. It's nothing like if like any of my teams that I follow that don't have the Ohio State expectations. I feel like I'm going to enjoy so much more. If I could say, okay, Ohio State's going to win the next 3 straight national championships, that's awesome. But I don't think that's as cool as watching one of my other teams that never win at that level win there or get there just one time. I felt the energy when the Bengals made it to the Super Bowl just a few years ago. And I'm not a Bengals fan, but, I mean, you don't have to be a fan to just feel the excitement and the energy and just how different this city, Dayton and Cincinnati and just Ohio was and this region was in general, because it was weird seeing the Bengals get to the Super Bowl. That's just not a team that has that kind of success on a consistent level to the point where that's the expectation. So I threw out, think about this upcoming season for baseball. Who has a chance to have the more enjoyable season, the Reds or the Dodgers? Now you're thinking, well, the Dodgers, they've loaded up on every star possible. They're the defending World Series champions. They're the favorites to win the World Series again. Like, that fan base is going to enjoy their season way more than we are ours. But here's the deal. If the Reds win a lot of games this season, we expect them to, but we still doubt that they're going to, right? Like, we're going to enjoy the hell out of this season. I feel like this, as Reds fans are going to, we have a chance to enjoy this season significantly more than Dodgers fans, because if they win, they're supposed to. If they lose, it's the end of the world. And if they win it all, well, they're supposed to. I'm not saying that's not a cool spot to be in, but I don't think they truly get that emotional high that we do when we watch our team start to do something that they're not supposed to. I always bring up that June of 2023, but that was such a magical month because they were playing at such a high level, so much above expectations. That was one of the funnest months of baseball, and it's so sad to say that as a Reds fan that we've had in quite some time because we got to watch them play at a level that we just don't get to see. Think of college football this year. Who do you think had a better year as a fan? Indiana football fans or Ohio State football fans? We got to watch our team win a national championship, yes, but it was a hell of a season, and hell being the key word there. It was a horrible season. We did not enjoy ourselves throughout the majority of that season. Indiana fans, though, they were on cloud nine. Their program looked like they belonged with the big boys. They got to the playoff. Indiana fans, they beyond enjoyed themselves this season. That's kind of us right now as Reds fans. Is our team good enough to win a World Series? Probably not. But I feel like we're about to enjoy ourselves a hell of a lot more than Dodgers fans are because there's only one outcome that could give them a successful season. There's a couple things that could happen for us to truly enjoy our season coming up. I think Reds fans are about to have a much more enjoyable year.
If the Dodgers at any point in the next 162 games are battling for the NL West, the fans are going to be irate.
Yeah.
Like, that should never happen. If the Reds are within like 5 games of the lead of the Central with like a month to play, we're going to be so happy. So I don't think that's crazy to say. Now, chance for happiness, I would say it's much more likely the Dodgers win the World Series than we do. So obviously they have a better chance for happiness. But everything before that for the Dodgers would be an immense letdown.
Yeah.
And for the Reds, you can get wins along the way. So it sounds crazy, but I don't think it necessarily is.
Like Dodgers fans, if they don't win a World Series, it's
with 110 wins.
It's an abject failure. It's a complete and utter disaster if they don't. If the Reds, miss the playoffs, I'm like, damn, that's disappointing. But it's like, it is what it is.
There's a lot of ways the Reds can get to missing the playoffs where it's not a failure of a season.
I feel like Ohio State fans and the teams and the fans of teams that have I imagine Alabama football is like it as well. It's like celebrating a championship is like it's like not really even celebrating. It's like, all right, we did it this year. We did our job. Can't wait to do it again next year. I'm already on to next year. And a lot of teams have that mentality, that have the benefit of that mentality, and I just don't. I don't have a team that has that benefit.
Fair.
Brutal.
And this is why, I laugh at Michigan fans, the back and forth I get with them all the time is they think that they're an equal to Ohio State, and I'm like, I don't think that they are, mainly because Ohio State wins a national championship, we're supposed to. Last year, Michigan wins a national championship, and it was like the biggest thing in the world to them, and it was a huge deal to Ohio State. Do not get me wrong, but Ohio State's doing what they're supposed to. Michigan, that's not what they do. I mean, that was rare seeing them get to the point where they won that national championship, something they haven't done in decades. So that it's just all about sometimes your team, poor Ohio State fans, we don't get to enjoy it as much. It was cool watching them win a national championship, but it will not be even close to the emotion I'll feel when I get to watch any of my other teams win a championship in any sport, whether it's the World Series, Super Bowl, national championship, whatever it is, college basketball, all that fun stuff. So, we'll see how that rolls. I do think Bearcat fans, I do feel like you guys are in a weird situation too. Let me ask, when you guys were in the American Conference, you never had what do you think going to the Big 12 has kind of messed you up a little bit mentally as far as what the fair expectations are? Do you think that that's messed you guys up a bit? Because the Bearcats
a little bit.
you're having a great year.
Bearcats?
I'm not stirring the pot with this, I promise. I'm just genuinely interested because everyone wants their team to move up to a bigger conference. Flyer fans here in Dayton, they want the Big East. They want this bigger conference so bad. And I'm like, you guys, when you win the A-10, that's such a great feeling, and that's a very attainable goal. But you could barely win the A-10. You barely dominate the A-10, and yet you want to go to the Big East. I feel like that's a whole other can of worms of disaster waiting for you if you actually get to that conference. I am curious. It's only been first season in the Big 12, right?
Yeah.
Has it been everything you thought it would be? I don't know.
Second season in the Big 12. Second season in the Big 12, sorry.
I feel like it's messed with your expectations a little bit, something that maybe they're not ready for.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly goes into it. The American Conference, when we were in it, I will say, I bashed the American Conference. There was some good basketball teams. I mean, you had UConn for a time. You had Memphis. Wichita State's not terrible. You had Houston in there. The American Conference was serviceable. Not like a power. It doesn't feel like a power conference, and you know that going in when you're playing East Carolina and Tulane twice a year. But you still have solid teams. The expectation for the Big 12 is just to go 500. It's always been my expectation. I think for other fans, it certainly has. I think other fans want to go as 15-5 or whatever it is. I expect 500, and maybe that's the wrong expectation, and maybe that's your point. I expect to at least go 500. There are teams in the Big 12 that are worse than the Bearcats. I know that for a fact. And the fact that we haven't been able to capitalize this season is just so frustrating.
Yeah, because like as a fan, if I watch Cincinnati when they're in the American Conference, if you go beat a Kansas, holy crap, an American Conference team just went and beat a Kansas. If like everything is like such a bigger accomplishment when you're in the American, but when you're in the Big 12, we beat Kansas. Well, you're a Big 12 team. You're supposed to, right? Like the only the only goals that you have to move your expectations of, the only thing you could accomplish is something that's very, very, very hard to do, and that's to get to a Final Four, win a national championship. When you're in the American Conference, you can get to the Sweet 16. Hang a banner for that, right? Like that's a great accomplishment. It's just weird what the expectations, how that changes when you move up a conference. You think it's great, but I think it messes with people, an identity crisis, if you will, when that type of stuff happens. But either way, I think we're out of time. I know we're out of time. We got Dialed In coming up next. Tom and Luke. Casey's out. Jake's in producing the show, of course. So that's coming up next. There's no gap, right? We're done on YouTube until Dialed In starts?
We got to get everything set for Tom's show. Yep, we are done. We're out.
Jake, another good job as usual. Appreciate you.
Thank you. See you
Elliot,
tomorrow.
hopefully your day's better tomorrow. We'll talk then. Until tomorrow, this has been Off the Bench.